Right, well, this past week or so I've been messing about doing one or two things on the bike, and one of the things I've done is swap the handlebars. I wanted to put something a little bit lower than the standard bars on, and what I've gone for are these Vincent pattern flat bars, and I'd expected it to be a fairly straightforward job, but unfortunately it isn't. It's a bit more involved than you would expect, and I'll explain in a minute why that is. First of all, it's dead easy to strip the bars to get all the switchgear and everything off. There's nothing difficult about that whatsoever. Obviously I've got the bar end mirrors, so you need to remove those both sides. Then you're looking at getting the handlebar grip off. Now, because the heated grips makes life a little bit more awkward, this shroud here over the button, there's a couple of screws at the back, torque screws, whip them out, the shroud comes off. There's a couple of screws holding this on, you take those out, and then that's free to move on the handlebar. The only drawback is that obviously there's a wire between there and the switch gear. So then you need to take the two screws out of the back of the switch gear, pull the switch unit forward on its wiring, and then you need to slacken the clamp, and you can slide the whole lot along the bar a little bit, and then that gives you some slack on the cable off of the heated grip that pokes through a hole in the bottom of the handlebar, and there's a connector. Disconnect the connector, then you can slide that off, and you can take all that assembly off and just let it dangle out the way. Similar setup on this side. So there's a screw underneath and a screw at the back. You pull the switchgear unit forward. What I did here, I supported all this on I put a piece of wood across the back of the clocks here. And I put a piece of wood to support that so it wasn't dangling. And yeah, basically same idea. There's another connector in here, so you've got to slide the whole thing along to disconnect, so it can come through out of the handlebar through the hole to disconnect it. Then you can basically that will actually pull out. It's a bit awkward because it locates. There's a pin inside on the throttle activation assembly, but it does come off. And then, rather than disconnecting everything, if you take the handlebar clamp off, you can then slide the bar from out of the this unit inside here that goes around the bar. It'll slide out. Once you've got that lot out of the way, you're then looking at the original bars, which we'll look at now. So these are the bars, these are the originals that came off the bike, and in order to fit standard stock handlebars, you've got a fair bit of messing about to do, particularly if you want to refit your heated grips. So I'll just turn them over, and you can see this is the clutch lever side. There's this slot. I'll try and zoom in. There we go. There's this slot cut into the bar. That's to accommodate the wiring off the heated grip, which then passes down the bar and passes through that large hole just there. You've also got in here two tapped holes, one there and one there. They're tapped M4. There's a couple of torque screws that actually hold the handlebar grip on, or the heated grip onto the bar. So you've got to take measurements and cut these pieces out. That wasn't much of a problem. I managed to just hacksaw straight down and then cut across and break it off. Then file it up, make sure there's no sharp edges. Right, throttle side. This is a little bit more different. Same idea, a slot, but at this point it's opened out, because obviously when you're opening and closing the throttle, the wiring's got to be able to move and not be broken off. So you need to take a little bit more out here. I did exactly the same again. I cut down, cut across, broke that piece out, then I cut down to where I need to go just here, and fortunately I've got like a little there it is, like a little Dremel-y type thing, and I put a cutting disc on that and just cut across, cut about halfway through, and then broke it off with a pair of pliers. So that was that. I mean, if you haven't got a cutting disc, you can do what I've done in the past and then chain drill and then break it off and just file it up. Again, it needs all filing up and cleaning up. Also on this side again, another large hole for the connector to poke through, and that pokes through into the back of the switch unit. It needs to be a good large elongated hole, else you're not going to get the connector to poke back through. And then there's no holes for, obviously, for fastening the grip on, because it's got to rotate, but there is another hole just here which is to locate the brake lever assembly. There's a lug cast into the back of the brake lever assembly that's got to locate in that hole. I assume it's there to prevent the whole lot twisting around the handlebar when you pull the throttle open, or possibly just to make sure that the reservoir remains level. Whatever it's there for, unless you're going to do some damage to your brake lever assembly and knock the lug off, you're going to need to drill that hole as well. And then, yeah, it's just a case of refitting then. So I did all my measurements. I used a marker pen and marked a datum line on the top of the, on the very top of the handlebars, and did all my measurements from those points. Now for the other problem. Come on, you're in focus. Right. Well, you can see that, but in the end of each handlebar there's a metal plug, and it's got, oh dear, an M6 threaded hole in the end, and they've kind of angled it a bit there so that it doesn't impinge on the wiring. You could leave that out and just knock some kind of a plug into the end of the handlebar, but if you fit in the Triumph bar end mirrors, again, you could just fit the bar end mirrors and you could knock some kind of plastic plug in the end. But I wanted to refit the bar end finishers that I bought. So what I did, I was very lucky. I'd got a length of this kicking about in the garage. This is a piece of 25mm diameter PTFE rod, and I'm fortunate I've got access to a small modeller's lathe, so I turned it down until it was an interference fit in the end of the bar, and then I just cut a couple of pieces, knocked them into the end of the bar, and they don't go anywhere. And if you fit in the Triumph bar end mirrors that clamp on the end of the bar, it also, because you've cut the bar, it clamps it even tighter onto the plastic. So that's how I got away with it. A couple of plastic plugs made really tight fit in the end of the bar, drilled and tapped 6mm, and then screwed the bar end finishers back on. And that is about your lot. A word of advice: if you're planning on fitting alternative bars, make sure that this distance here from the end of the bar to the first bend is long enough to accommodate particularly the throttle side, the throttle and the switch gear. I think it measures out at something like 8.5 inches. I bought a pair of bars, and the first pair, it wasn't long enough, that distance, and the handlebar or the brake lever clamp was right on the bend, not very good at all. So I finished up buying another pair from Armours, I think at Bournemouth, and you've got about 11.5 inches here, 11 inches I think, with 8.5 inches in the middle, and that accommodated everything perfectly well. As you can see, they all fit rather nicely. I'm rather pleased with them. Nice flat bars. Plenty of room here. Look, between the clamp and the bend. That's what you've got to be careful of. They are 1-inch bars, not 7/8. So if you're ordering some, make sure they're 1 inch. Say hacksaw, drill, files, about all you need really to get them to fit. And there we are, got the bar ends fitted again with my plastic plugs in there, and nobody's the wiser. So it's not turned out too bad at all really, fitting those. So you can make life a hell of a lot easier if you don't refit the heated grips, but I'm not sure how you'd go on with the throttle side, because there's no way you're going to remove. You'd have to, it comes as an assembly with with a pin on it to activate the ride-by-wire throttle. So unless the replacement Triumph ones come with that, and I can't say for certain that they do, you're going to be struggling. But say it's not. Took me time. It took me a day to fit them. I weren't rushing, because you want to make sure you've got all your measurements right. You know, measure twice, cut once, as they say, and that they're going to fit properly. They're a bit close on full lock to the tank, I must admit, particularly the throttle side, because the throttle side, the whole assembly is longer than on the clutch side. It's, you know, the switch gear and everything. So it's a lot long, well, about 1/2 inch longer. So when you're on full lock, the clutch side is clear of the tank, but the throttle side is dangerously close. But then again, how often do you put your bars on absolute full lock? And this, so long as you're aware of the fact, you know, you're going to be careful. But no, I'm quite pleased with those. So, as I say, it's a bit involved. It's not straightforward, and you know, you can make it hard for yourself, or you can make it easy. It's entirely up to you. But I'm really pleased with how it looks now and rides. So that's my advice. Check the length of the bars. Make sure you get them a decent length, so you know that everything's going to fit properly. And just be very careful with your measurements. Measure twice, cut once. Right, I'll see you. Bye.